Hi, my name's Mark. I started Vistar Media about 13 years ago, and I helped onboard responsive ads onto our platform from a technical perspective.
My name is Martina. I am with Vistar Media for now 10 years, and I'm leading our studio globally, our in-house creative studio that we offer at Vistar Media to help and support our brands getting the right attention and using the capabilities of programmatic digital out-of-home nowadays on those digital screens. And I'm leading the effort for designers to use responsive ads on a daily basis.
Cool. So, Mark, you said you were one of the founders of Vistar. What was the impetus to start Vistar?
Well, Michael and I had previously built one of the first programmatic advertising companies in display, and we were able to see the efficiencies that brought to the market. So after we sold that company to Vistar, we looked around for a little bit for other industries that we thought could really benefit from programmatic technology and using technology to help schedule, optimize ads, and just general ecosystem health. So we identified specifically digital out of home as a great opportunity. I think that we underestimated how many opportunities there was, but it's been a great ride, and I think the whole industry has grown as a result.
So it sounds like the reaction in the market has been really positive for Vistar.
It's been great. I think everyone's excited that now that we've been acquired by T-Mobile, it adds a bit of legitimacy to us, programmatic out of home, and sort of the ecosystem as a whole. The out of home we've seen over the past decade and a half has really become just a much more desirable industry, and people are really excited about it in the future.
So have there been changes in the types of clients that are using digital at home since starting Vistar?
Our clients have gotten much more serious. So we were really a newcomer to the field, and it took us a while to sort of be treated with a certain level of respect. We've used our trust and relationship building in the industry over the years to gain a lot of respect from the big players. So when we started, it was small guys, people that weren't doing well financially that would kind of take a check from anybody. And now we power the biggest out-of-home industries in the world.
For instance, like who?
We power Lamar's network. We work very closely with Outfront. Basically, if they're a major player on the out-of-home scene, digital or otherwise, they work with Vistar Media in some capacity.
So you work with Lamar, Outfront, Clear Channel. How does RAD keep you competitive against folks like Hivestack, Broadsign, Place Exchange, or Verizon Media?
One of the things that is slightly different with out of home compared to digital is that the IAB sort of never came in and declared a fixed set of sizes. So Lamar, for example, a big part of their business is acquiring smaller billboard operators who sort of put up whatever inventory they can. So the number of sizes and different setups of all the different screens, once you get to a nationwide campaign, there can be hundreds. So we remain competitive because now with responsive ads, we have a solve to get a single creative out to 100 different sizes where it's a level beyond competitive because there's no other practical way to do that. We've tried and experimented with, hiring fleets of interns to sit in Photoshop all day resizing ads, but it just isn't scalable. It's not a viable business. So what we can do now is have designers work directly in responsive ads and serve that creative directly on hundreds of different sizes.
Tell me about the studio team and how it has disrupted the digital out-of-home space.
We when we came into the space, what we saw is that it was very static. So you went from posters to digital screens, right? And that allowed us to show motion, which is still easy to do for many brands and creative agencies. But with out of home taking more adding the programmatic element to it and taking over more characteristics from like digital advertising using data and customizing creative based on the data in real time. we saw an opportunity to also take that into the digital out-of-home space. And so what we're trying to, what we build and what Mark is very responsible for is making sure that you can run everything that you do on digital display, like dynamic creatives, that you have that same opportunity on the screens outdoor. And the huge innovation on that is then dynamic creatives. And I would say that is a real differentiator that we have in the market compared to our competitors as well.
That's interesting. So what was the process for building creative before you switched to this platform? How long did it take you to build creative?
Yeah, so before we did, and actually this is still how many brands are doing it today, is they would manually build for every single version. So and for every creative size. So let's say you are an ice cream brand and you wanna, I don't know, advertise for different weather types and adjusting your message to that weather type. They would literally create those different versions statically and then also resizing it to all the different screens. And that obviously takes a lot of time. And from the creative side, but also on the media side, because that would mean that a person who is planning the media would have to upload these creatives and also attach them to the right targeting. So it's like it was a very big process for both the creatives, both the media specialists, and the media owners approving and hand touching every single creative that went through it. So it was a lot.
So that's interesting. So we're just one platform, though. Do you work with any other platforms? And has there been any gaps? You work with us, but are there any other platforms that you use or have used, and what were the gaps?
Yes, we have been trying and evaluating many different platforms that claim to offer responsiveness or resizing. And what we've seen is that it, in terms of the dynamic elements, it offers variety, or opportunities, but it always sticks on the responsiveness. And why? It's because it's very built for the digital space, display, and social, which is a complete different dynamics because it doesn't have that many sizes. It's standardized. In out of home, it's not standardized, and that it will never be the case, honestly, because out of home screens are also selected for that kind of environment to make an impact in a specific environment. And so what we saw is that with responsive ads, we really could, it didn't matter what kind of size you had, even the weirdest sizes that we see in out of home, they are accounted for. We can work with that. So yeah, that's great.
So how difficult was it to integrate responsive ads into Vistar's platform?
Mark, let's answer that.
Yeah, more of a Mark. So I guess the question would be, I have a frog in my throat this morning. So you've worked with other platforms or tried to work with other platforms. Obviously, there were some gaps in what made responsive ads flexible enough to be able to do what you needed to do with Vistar.
Right. Well, first of all, the major feature that makes this easy is the Photoshop import. So we can already get a major leg up getting art from the client and getting it into the tool. But the thing that really made it flexible is the code console. So we needed specific hooks and behaviors, and there's a lot of features built in to allow content to be dynamic, but we just have ultimate flexibility with the tools to hook in and actually program, put code in the tool to have it like really customize exactly how we need it to
be. That's a tricky one.
I think this is good for you to answer, Martine. I mean, in practice, like it depends a lot on like what we have, but like, if we talk through an example where like the client sends Photoshop and it's like closest location, we went from like, you remember doing the lotto? Like,
Yeah.
we have gone from turning these things around like in a month and needing to get them scheduled with engineering time where they can do this in a day now.
Yeah. I would say like going from a month to a few business days, depending on scope, would be the perfect answer on
Yeah,
complexity.
that's right. And I think it's worth saying if we have everything in hand and we can give the
Yeah.
designers everything, we're not waiting. Like once we've got everything we need, which always takes a couple of days,
Mm.
we have gone from a month with engineers and different teams and all this coordination and QA to get it done, and they can get it done in less than a day now.
Less than a day. Nice.
Yeah,
Well, it's practically true. It's just the going back and forth is what it takes time. Yeah.
it's going back and forth. There's no
Yeah.
tool in the world that's going to fix that.
No, 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 no. That's just fixing the client.
We discussed what your process was before using responsive ads. What's your process today, and how quickly can you bring a campaign to market?
Yeah, so before responsive ads, it took us quite a while to build a dynamic and responsive ad from scratch. It went through different developers and departments in order to get it done. Now with responsive ads, we can do it in less than a day if you take out the feedback loops that are also involved with it. So it's pretty efficient now, you can say that.
Understand Vistar has used machine learning, and Vistar continues to be a big innovator with real-time optimization to improve ad efficiency. How does this impact your creative process?
One of the things that Vistar is really good at is using data to improve audience efficiency. So marketers, brands are trying to reach their consumer in the world. And that's one of the things we do really well is using data to optimize the experience to the consumer. So the brand has got a direct channel. And so one of the things we're really excited about with responsive ads and all these dynamic offerings is using real world data, AI to help optimize the ads. So marketers are getting the best experience. They're getting the best messages with the best timing in front of the consumers, and the consumers have the best overall experience.
Another way that we use AI for, especially in the studio team, is to look to analyze and predict the impact of a creative in the different kind of environments. So we with the creatives that we've done within responsive ads, rely on pre-test or even post-test the creatives to see what it has done, and that's quite an added value.
So I was reading the other day that more brands are using Vistar's technology to blend digital out of home with digital campaigns. How does that work exactly?
How we blend out of home with digital campaigns?
Yeah, so say you're a soda brand and you're running a digital display campaign on like tablet, mobile, desktop,
I
and they
think, I
also
think
want to run digital out of home. It seems like before the process, that would have been a difficult process considering the amount of time that it took to adapt that creative to digital out of home. But now, because it's almost on parity from a time perspective, have you seen more brands wanting to do that where like it's more of an omnichannel experience where they can go live with both digital out of home and digital display and maybe even like other above the line media like TV?
so. Martine, I think the good answer here might be a little US specific, but it's fine. We do see this, and one of the big advantages we have now is that we can take the IAB sizes right from the creative agency, load them up into the tool, and make them responsive. So what we would have had to do before, because the IAB sizes don't line up with the billboards, we would have had to send them to an art team to have them resize them in Photoshop basically by hand. So we see it more often because we're able to do it, and we do that by importing the IAB sizes into responsive ads and making them hit the sizes of the inventory. But it's IAB sizes.
However, I would not recommend it, but from a creative point of view,
It helps
but
us.
it's
It really
possible.
it helps us get started.
Yes.
This is I'm not saying this turns around in a day, but it's a leg up we've got with brands and marketers.
Okay.
Do you want to
I think
speak to that, Martine? I don't want to speak too much for like the studio on this. Like I think
No,
it's
I think, in terms of efficiency and especially, regarding responsive ads that you can do both IAB and digital out of home, that's great, right? I mean, that's a real pain in the ass for a lot of clients. I think what I could speak to is that what we see is that with our platform and with our solutions that we engineered, we opened up the space way more for more digital agencies. They are now, where mostly traditional agencies were doing out of home. Now that it's digital, we see digital agencies coming into the space and want to use the same things that you're using in the digital campaigns on digital out of home or out of home screens. And so what we're seeing is that they do want to like upcycle their digital campaign, what they're doing on display, onto digital out of home, which creates a lot of, I would say, great creative use cases. And now that we have responsive ads, we can easily scale that to the different screens that we have. Because again, what these agencies bump into is again the many various sizes and the technology. Because unfortunately, using your Google ads, it will not particularly run and work on the digital out of home ads. So it needs like a little bit of an interference, but thanks to responsive ads, it's actually quite easy to do that now.
so. You mentioned something interesting. I just wanted to follow up with another question, which was traditionally, out of home has been, above the line media agency like TV, print, but now you say there's more digital agencies getting into digital out of home because it is digital. What
Or
has
out of
been the
home.
uptake or out of home? Yeah.
Yeah.
What has been the uptake in terms of like seeing digital agencies now to take away, space traditionally owned by above line media agencies?
Well, that's hard to say. Like both Mark and I are not on the commercial side, or not in that way.
Right.
And I think it's also very depends on the market. So, for example, in EMEA, we see, or in Europe, we see actually that the digital agencies are leading the way for more traditional agencies to show like what can you do with the out of home channel that is today, with the capability that it has today. Whereas I can imagine, Mark, that in the US, it was really about like going to traditional agencies and showing them what they can do. However, maybe we should not use this, by the way, in the thing, but you see so much consolidations within the media industry that you see traditional agencies and media agencies, digital agencies come together, because that's,
Yeah.
otherwise you can't make a business anymore. So that's also what has changed, of course.
right. And that was one of the value propositions of the company early on, was bringing programmatic out of home to the programmatic ecosystem to programmatic buyers, where we really specifically for the first while, like out of home specialists are out of home specialists, and they bring a lot of value to the industry, and they're sort of the backbone of a lot of parts of out of home, and it's just not our customer. So what we're trying to do is make out of home look as much like digital as we can, so we can talk to the digital agencies and the brands that are used to buying digital. And now these days what that means is we can talk to dozens of different DSPs, where a brand can go in and just allocate their budget across any channel they want. So we can bring the out of home experience to the otherwise digital agencies and brands.
All right, I'd like to thank Martina and Mark for that beautiful Q&A session we just had about the Vistar business. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and move over and have a live demo of an ad build from Nick and Michael from their technical and production teams. And followed by that, we're going to have a beautiful live Q&A with the Vistar team. So plenty of good stuff to come up.
Hi, I'm Michael Bradley. I'm one of two people who do dynamic creative specifically for Vistar Media. I've been here for officially about 1 year, but unofficially maybe about 2. working exclusively in responsive ads.
Yeah, I'm Nick Dolger. I am person 2 out of 2 who works on dynamic creative exclusively in responsive ads. And I'm happy to be here as well.
Great. So we're gonna skip over all the general questions, Mark, and just get into the demo. And so the idea behind the demo is, I guess, well, maybe Mark, you could talk about this first to give a little context to Michael and Nick, which is what was your process before you started using a third-party tool like responsive ads to build your creative?
Pain was basically our only tool. So we just generally did not have a solve. When online advertising, there's an organization called the IAB that sort of sets standard creative sizes. There might be 4 or 5 big ones, and it might expand to like 20 or 30. There's no such standard online. So in order to get a campaign live with reach to a significant number of screens in the US, you may have to make it 20, 30, 50 different sizes. And in certain regions like Asia Pacific, that number can get into the hundreds. So we had, when we needed it, we worked with consultants who would work on an hourly rate that would get the original Photoshop files and turn them into, in some cases, 150 new Photoshop files where they went around and positioned things by hand, moved things around, manually rendered them down, organized it, sent them back to us, which was a very slow and expensive process. And then we needed support and customer support people to upload them one at a time into the system, make sure that they were trafficked and associated correctly. Each one of those has to be specifically approved by the media owner. So the answer of what we did before we could use responsive ads for a single responsive creative that can work anywhere is we sucked it up, and it was very painful. This has been a great tool for us.
How long did it take you to do production before you started using this tool?
Oh, I would say, I mean, we'd have to sit in a queue. So we outsourced the resizing, but I think we generally expected 2 to 3 weeks.
I'm just going to walk you through a build. And we start off by looking at this Best Western build we have here. I've created the main breakpoints up here for our fully fluid design. The advertiser gave us 2 images to work with, cropped just slightly differently. So we went in and kind of have them set to cover. Let's see, that's our layer. So, and then we've got the focal point set to where we need it.
What's the focal point?
The focal point is right in the middle of the image here, just to get it lined up so that you have something nice and pleasant to look at as you're reading this deal here off to the right.
What's the purpose of the focal point?
Oh, the purpose of this particular focal point is to
just focal points in general.
Focal points in general. When you have it as cover, then you can have it be the main idea.
Oh, I see. It always stays in focus.
Yeah. That's your focus when you have it set to cover. Let's see here. So we have the advertiser logo, the deal, and we have a placeholder for our dynamic information coming in. What we use often is these breakpoints to set up different layouts to keep the ad responsive. Using this folder div area element section, we can really customize per breakpoint how we use these. Usually we copy the element structure over at this point, so we'll copy the layout, keeping the element order so that everything is organized between our breakpoints. We'll then create another common but not often used breakpoint of square so that everything stays super responsive. And another feature I really rely heavily on are the ability to add our guidelines and just keep our gutters in place, keep everything exactly how the client has it laid out in their Photoshop file that they tend to send us. We use this code editor pretty heavily. So at this point is when I would hook up the dynamic addresses. So we have these stored on our Amazon S3, a list of addresses that we can then pull in for our ads. So we have this one showing here. And we can take a look at that in the browser and make sure that they're being pulled in correctly. And then we can go ahead and use the breakout and just get a sense of what these all look like in this responsive and dynamic layout.
Did you have to like make all these different versions by hand before instead of doing?
Or these would have to be made by hand. The way we have integrated this code editor and the CSV into our workflow has made it so we can give it a list of all the locations, and then they automatically populate when you are close to those locations. So this is like super convenient to just design for the longest name on the list and then have them all appear when you need them.
Oh, that's clever.
Here's an example of a brand that isn't as responsive. So we did have to create a lot of breakpoints for this particular brand because every size that they are using has a different header image. So we can take that header image, make a breakpoint, and get that sized correctly on the screens that they want to show these ads. It's very fast, but it is a little bit more involved than something that is super responsive like this.
So you can just add the additional sizes, then go in and make individual tweaks if you need to.
That's correct. Let's see here. Another feature that we tend to use often is once we get these images in here, they tend to be on the larger side. So going to your image optimizer and bringing the file size of the overall ad down has been really helpful.
Yeah, I noticed you're using quite large files, which makes sense because you're doing it for digital screens and it's out of home.
Yeah, these are all billboard out of home sizes, so we want to make sure that the clarity is there. Some of these, like this particular ad, we're using smaller WebP sizes, so they're not as intensive, but the overall ad size is pretty light for the amount of images we actually have in here.
How long did it take you to set up your DCO through the developers console?
Not too long. I mean, for this particular build, from taking it out of the client's Photoshop file and getting it into our DSP probably took maybe 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
For this particular build because it was so responsive. Builds like this will take us a little longer.
Do you ever change the language based upon location?
Yes, we have done that. And that's easy enough to do in the code editor. You just write extra, like an extra little script along with where you're setting your element. So
Mm-hmm.
the A9 element here is where we're bringing in the location. So we would just write a couple extra lines of JavaScript to have it say, um, stay at Best Western tonight for whatever the deal is. Or you could have it, you're in Louisiana, stay at these locations. Like you can customize per location.
Yeah, Best Western actually has a nice place in the quarter, if I recall. In New Orleans, that is.
Yeah, I think I haven't been there in a while, but I
So when
can.
you're working with a client, do you give them specs for the PSD, or you just sort it out? They just throw something over the wall and you sort it all out.
The RCS team builds a media plan for them, um, based around our standard sizes and then anything else they might want to hit in between. And with that, then we can add the individual sizes to our breakpoint area here. If we need to get something super granular, that's super helpful.
Cool.
That is all that I have for this particular part of it. And I think Nick's ready to go with some of our favorite features.
Yeah, just when you think it couldn't get better, hold on to your britches. So there are some really great things about RA that just make builds even more efficient, even quicker, and save even more time. A big one that I really like and am a fan of is the integration with Photoshop. So a lot of clients send over these working files, usually in the Photoshop format. So this is an example of one where this is the build and the assets that they want to see. And as in this Photoshop file, every single piece is an individual asset that would need to be optimized, exported, and individually imported into RA. And so there's usually there can be like 20 to 30 different components that are needed. And so, yeah, so what we would usually do is take every single piece and export it individually in a folder and then put it in to RA. But now with the Photoshop integration, I can show you something that we can do, which is if we go to these PSD options right here and we add Photoshop file as a group of images, we can take the Photoshop file and just drag it in, give it a second to upload, and then it's all here. It's all in place. Everything's grouped as we need it to be. Everything's individual. And it's a really, really great way. It's a really, really, really easy way to start a build. This probably saves us like 30 minutes to an hour of the individual exporting and importing. And still with Photoshop, it gets even better where we have a lot of clients who, for example, this client individual, they did kind of a generic countdown to the kickoff, but then they also did a Super Bowl countdown. And so it's a very similar layout, but with just different tweaks to every individual asset. So like for example, we need the background to be a little bit lighter or I think a different color. You can see it right here how it's
Yep.
this lighter purple. And so we can go back to this drop down and we can replace images with layers from a PSD. And we drag that in and we let it upload. And now we have every single individual piece from that Photoshop file. And this is a really, really like brilliant way to bulk replace anything that needs to be replaced, like changing kickoff is in to tip off in if it's NBA instead of NFL. Here, I'm just going to change the background as just this one example. And then you replace it and it's there. And that's all you need to do. So it's really, really, it's a really brilliant feature that has saved hours of our time.
So if you're working for the same client, you can just create a template and then quickly change certain elements without having to rebuild everything from scratch.
Yeah, exactly. And so this client is, or in a different variation, like this rectangle was green. Like I said, it's a tip off instead of kickoff. There was a different Prize Picks logo that was this, but I think it wasn't solid. It just had like a pink or a white stroke. And so you just pull that Photoshop file in, you just toggle what needs to be changed, and then it's just as easy as that. And then it also changes across every single breakpoint as well. So it's just a very, very easy swap to do. Moving on from Photoshop, another really efficient feature is, sorry, the zoom blocking my tabs, is the copy element. So this was that Super Bowl version I was mentioning, but as you can see here, we have all of these individual pieces laid out exactly how we need them to be. And a lot of times there will be last minute assets that need to be pulled in, and that would get tricky because all of the breakpoints are already set up. So we would have to go into every single breakpoint and
Make tweaks.
remove everything around, which could, could take like, I don't know, like another 1 to 2 hours. But with this copy feature, for example, as you can see, this is not as desired. But instead of moving everything up and down, doing that for like 12 to 50 breakpoints, we can just go to the one that's already been set up and go down to this copy elements and select whichever desired breakpoints you want to copy it over. And then as you can see, you have all of these options that you can and can't copy over. So, positioning, size, other styles, the parent reference, and then also just all of the child properties. So once you copy that all over, you have exactly what you need. And, there is like a little bit more tweaking, maybe just in terms of maybe bringing this down, making this a little bit smaller, but that took about what, like 45 seconds versus, versus like 1 to 2 hours.
So you can copy animations over too?
You can copy animations. We haven't toyed with that as much, but that is another thing. Let's say if you need this to do some sort of rotation, that we can bring that over via the animation, that copy tool. And then also, let's say this was white on this one and we needed it to be black everywhere. That's those style properties that you can copy over. So you could make sure every single countdown is in that black text and has the same, just all properties centered, max size, font, bolded, etc.
And are you doing a dynamic countdown clock?
This is a dynamic countdown. Yeah, so this would be just a standard countdown.
So that's just a placeholder.
It is, yeah. And I think if this code is here, yeah, as you can see, we have our own countdown function that Mark implemented right here. So that's just a countdown to the Super Bowl, which is the 9th at 6:30. This can also become dynamic if we pull a time from an API, depending on what day it is, when the next football game is. That can also be dynamically pulled, even like, let's say going back to this one, as you can see, you know, this is San Antonio specific. Maybe this countdowns to the San Antonio game, but then we want the Atlanta game to show the countdown, which is going to be different. We can pull the location in and then use that location to determine the correct
The
countdown.
time. Oh,
Yeah,
that's really cool that you
exactly.
do that.
Yeah, so it's really great to bring in, you know, like the location, a countdown.
You can even change the language in addition to the time zone then.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you could do Spanish with a countdown clock for Central versus
No, exactly. And yeah,
Pacific.
the different time codes and whatnot. And you know, this is all because of this, it's like what, 7,000 lines of code that Mark masterminded. And we worked with RA just to make it a simple implementation right here, just adding a script tag.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that has the link to all of these lines of code. And so once that's in, we can run our own function with all of the features that we've implemented, such as like, you know, this countdown, closest location, distance from, like, let's say like your nearest, we had one that was like a nearest mattress store on the highway. And just a lot of those features that we're continuing to build on top of and like add as additions that RA's been able to take in and really just streamline the process.
So that developer consoles really made it extensible and flexible for Vistar
Yeah, absolutely.
because you're not locked into whatever the prevailing feature set is.
Yeah. And then, you know, once it's all put together, just to kind of highlight the export process, once we go to summary, it's another really like just easy, brilliant process that RA has been able to zip our packages for. So if you just do an export, you know, check fully fluid, we have a custom Vistar type that was created for us, add the fully fluid, and then save that. Once that's generated, that zip's right here. This zip is what we send to our Vistar DSP platform, and that's it. And then it's done. It's ready to push to production.
So all the images or the elements in that ad, are you actually just zipping up everything or are you pulling those elements from your third-party server?
We are pulling, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, we're pulling all of the elements from responsive ad. And I think if you open up this zip file, we can see, you know, the library and the assets of everything that's in the RA. Yeah, the RA console. Another option that we can do that RA has allowed us to do is, let's say we need like 50 sports teams, which we have before, we can host our own images on our Amazon bucket, and we can use our or RA's code, the code that we made with RA, just to assign the image source to, let's say, this one photo. And so instead of having 50 images, we just have one, and in the code, it will change the image based on the location that we're in, which is great.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
What about the fonts? Is it packaging up is it creating a subset of fonts that you use?
So the client will give us fonts. I'll go back to this one because this is the live type. The client will give us their own font, which we can upload here in RA's text. And then I believe, going back to that zip file, it's in the libraries. And this actually might be not correct. I actually think it might be in the index HTML as
Pulling it in.
yeah, pulling it in, I think from a style tag or a script tag, so it's inside that HTML.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Very elegant.
Yeah, and this is lightweight. This zip files maybe, let's see. Yeah, it's 5 megabytes.
For those
And
giant out-of-home billboards.
actually, yeah, so sorry, I take that back. It's less than a megabyte because this one needs to be optimized because it came from Photoshop, but that's really easy to do with that bulk optimization feature. But yeah, these things are less than a megabyte. They run instantly. It's like super lightweight. And
How long does it take somebody to set up a campaign from when they sign that IO to when they deliver you the creative assets? Can you get it up in a day?
Yeah, I would like to. I don't work with the
The
uploading
trafficking team, right?
Yeah, but so once we have once the zip is approved, we can set it live immediately. I think it's just, we upload it and then instantly it can be set live and sent to the billboards.
Back in the old days, they used to send painters out there
They went from painters and then they went to
to
people.
vinyl.
Yeah, and then they went to people with flash drives who would have to manually upload them. And so we have come a long way.
Yeah. I remember proof of performance was sending somebody out there to run the boards to see if they were actually out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Michael and Nick, I want to thank both of you for doing this demo with us today. It's been super enlightening, very exciting. And you guys are using super advanced features, love all the custom code. And I'm still blown away that you can export a 1 megabyte file and have it display on those giant out-of-home billboards and have it still look good. So, bravo.
Well, thank you. It's super satisfying to take from start to finish.
Yes, you have saved many days from our lives, so we thank you for that.
You have some family time back.
Yeah,
staying late to get a project out the door. So, but thank you again. It was thank you for your time. It was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.